Hey pedalers, welcome back to a brand new video. In this video, we're gonna be talking about why expensive road bikes are a waste of money in 2021. This is a follow-up video to the video I made the first time, which was called Expensive Road Bikes Are a Waste of Money, the Truth, which a lot of people found interest and shared their opinions. So I thought I would do another video kind of addressing a lot of the comments and just maybe reiterating my points in a more concise fashion that's easier to follow, because the whole point of that video was more so like my journey from riding very expensive road bikes to riding value road bikes. So in this video, I'll make it very concise and share more about my thought process that maybe was left out of the original one. So let's jump right into it. Now, the first point I really want to make clear is that bikes are a depreciating asset, which basically means they lose their value over time. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of depreciating assets are cars. Now, cars lose about 30 to 40% of their value within the first year after being purchased. Something funny I always heard when growing up was when you bought a brand new car and drove it off the lot, if you were to go back and try to sell the car that you just bought, that the dealership would offer you a lower price than you actually paid for it, even though you basically just bought a brand new car. The reason why I'm bringing up depreciating assets is because most people that are looking to buy a bike and most cyclists are usually on a budget, and for that reason, they want to maximize the value that they actually get out of a bike. Now, the following point I really want to put emphasis on it is that if you have the financial means to buy an expensive road bike, then by all means go for it. What you spend your money on is totally up to you, so do with that as you wish. But the whole point of this video and the last video are for cyclists that are on a budget, that are money conscious, and they're really debating between whether or not an upgrade such as an expensive road bike would yield a better cycling performance. And my hope for these videos is that I can actually highlight other factors that go into the overall cycling performance / abilities and really show cyclists where they can actually spend their energy and time and not just stay very focused on thinking that upgrades are the only way they can yield a better overall cycling performance. So if cars lose 30 to 40% of their value after being purchased for the first year, if we apply that to bikes and we're taking a look at the Tarmac SL7 Expert that's retailing for 5,000 USD, after the first year, the bike would be valued at 3,000 USD and you lose 2,000 USD. And that $3,000 price point is your best case scenario if you were to try to resell it, because that's not to take in consideration there's no scratches, there's no damage, the chain's been worn, the cassette's been worn, the crankset's been worn. You know, there's lots of factors that go into reselling the bike in terms of the condition that it's in, and you also have to deal with people lowballing you. So that 3,000 price point after it's depreciated by 40% after the first year is still probably not what you're gonna get for the bike if you decide to sell it. Now, I'm not gonna bore you. The same principle applies to the Tarmac SL7 that's going for $7,200, and the same principle applies to the S-Works Tarmac SL7 that retails for $12,300. And the biggest difference is that as you upgrade, there'll be more of an upfront cost in terms of investing into the bike. Now, I mentioned this in the previous video. The bikes I currently just showed were all Ultegra or had Di2 or carbon rims. It was more of the expensive road bikes. What I find after riding basically every type of road bike you can think about in terms of group sets, componentry, carbon layout, carbon rims, everything, I personally find that the gold standard, in my opinion, is a carbon fiber frame, 105 group set, and aluminum rims as well. So this bike retails for $2,399. Then again, I personally would ride the rim brake version, which I ride myself in terms of my road bike has rim brakes. So, you know, you can get a pretty good bike for around $2,000. And I think anything above that price point, you start getting negligible returns. Now, the whole point of me making the original video was to really highlight my personal experience riding and owning expensive bikes, and then my riding experience and owning, you know, value bikes or less expensive bikes, and really just sharing that information and that experience with viewers. And I thought it was super important to share what I learned when riding a less expensive bike, which was that there are more factors that I can improve on myself as a cyclist than thinking that the expensive bike is what's going to yield the best performance on the bike. So when I actually rode a cheaper bike or less expensive bike, the focus was less on the bike and more as me as the cyclist. And I think that's probably the most crucial things. And I think that's what majority of cyclists forget because of the cycling industry pushing flashy stuff, flashy products, and making you feel like you have to have more expensive in order to perform, which could be further from the truth. So I hope you guys can understand the rationale with the first video, which was basically just saying that you don't need a super expensive bike to yield the best performance. And I will touch upon that near the end of the video. Just to reiterate, after the video was posted, a lot of people shared their rationale and their thoughts in the comment section, which I always encourage. And I can't go through every comment, but one comment that stood out that I do want to address is as follows. So the comment reads, "This is kind of pointless really. I have an S-Works Venge, I'm a good rider, but definitely not a professional racer, and I probably don't get the maximum that the bike can offer, but I love riding it, it feels great, and I can afford it. Now, it's good that they acknowledge that they're not maximizing the bike's abilities, since the bike is designed for World Tour riders with World Tour demands and needs. And if they enjoy riding a bike that provides negligible returns based on their cycling abilities because they can afford it, then that's up to them. The comment goes on to say, it's like 90% of people who drive Porsche 911s, GT3s, they too are probably not racing car drivers, but they love the feeling of the car and engineering behind it. Now, they bring up the point how people buy sports cars, but yet they're not race car drivers themselves. And I just find that point really funny, because if we're talking about sports cars, when I see sports cars on the highway or on residential roads, there's speed limits. So if you're buying a car that's super expensive and that can go super fast, if you're really not going to take it to the track and you're not going to race it, then in my opinion, I just feel like it's very foolish, because then you're not really maximizing its performance. So unless you're going to break the law and go above the speed limit to really get that feeling that you most likely bought the sports car in the first place to experience, then a four-door sedan is going to be more fuel efficient and cost efficient than a Porsche or a sports car. Now, I have personally some friends that are car enthusiasts and have some pretty nice cars that go fast, and they're the type of people that do exist that will take it to the track and actually do some laps around and probably get the value that they originally wanted when they bought the car, which was to feel that speed, but doing it in a safe and controlled manner. Context really does matter here. I'm assuming, based on how they worded this comment, the Porsche 911s that are in question are being used by people that use it as their everyday, or when the weather's really nice, they'll take it and cruise with it. And if it's being used on residential roads and highways and not being taken to the track to just get some laps in and to really, turn up the speed in a safe and controlled way, then in my opinion, yeah, that's a waste of money, since you're really not getting the performance benefit of the car. If you're really not going to ever take it on the track on the weekends, yeah, it's a waste of money, since if a four-door sedan can go 100 kilometers and your Porsche can go 100 kilometers, then what is really the difference? What makes a sports car is feeling the speed. Now, I could go on about this topic, but I'm going to stop myself there and just say, if you're not really getting the full experience that the car actually is designed for, then I just don't find it worth spending all that money if you're really not going to go above 100 kilometers an hour like the car was designed for. So for that reason, if you're not going to take it to the track, it's really not worth the money. Yet again, I'll reiterate, I'm not hating on anyone. I'm simply saying that, in my opinion, the return that you get based on the investment is really not worth it if you're not going to maximize what it was designed for. And that goes directly back to the bike, and how you spend your money is totally up to you. If you find it's worthwhile and you have the financial means to do it, then totally do it. I just personally don't find value in that, and I personally think that's a waste of money. Then the comment follows up with, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and there's no point on hating such people. Now, like I just said, I'm not hating on anyone in this video or the previous video. I'm simply sharing my rationale and, in my experience, what I think is worthwhile spending your money on. And if you find that it's hateful in any way, then some serious self-reflecting is to be done. Now, this was my absolute favorite part of the comment. For that matter, I should tell you that you should work harder so you can actually afford to ride the bike you actually want, but I won't, because that too is a silly statement. Well, they were right with it being a silly statement to assume that I don't work hard or have the financial means to buy a bike that I actually do want to ride. The reality is, if I wanted a $10,000 bike, I simply would have bought one. It's as simple as that. But in reality, I just don't find the value. The single digit increases for performance are not worth the money I would have to spend in order to get those single digit increases in performance. And on top of that, I don't believe personally in lifestyle inflation, which basically means just because you can buy something doesn't mean you have to buy something. Now, I'll give an analogy, and this is the only analogy I'll be giving because you could go all day with this, but it's like buying a gaming PC that's $7,000 to $10,000, but you're going to be using it to surf the web. Now, if someone wants to buy a $7,000 or $10,000 gaming PC to surf the web because they have the financial means and they really like how it feels and the engineering behind it and the overall experience, then so be it. But I just personally find the fact that they're not maximizing what the computer is actually designed for, in my opinion, is simply a waste of money. And on the topic of them suggesting I should work harder so I can buy a bike that I would actually want to ride, all I'm going to say is I spend my money on appreciating assets that will actually make me money rather than spending it on depreciating assets that will lose their value over time. but I guess that's a silly statement, right? And I saw this in the comments a lot too. An $8,000 bike compared to a $600 bike, yes, you will probably be a lot faster on an $8,000 bike when compared to a $600 bike. No one is debating that. So I'll reiterate what I said in the last video, that basically anything, in my opinion, that's more expensive than $2,000, that's when you start getting negligible returns in terms of the performance that the bike can offer. Now, these factors are the most crucial factors when it comes to increasing your overall cycling abilities, and those are as follows. You have to have good training, good food, good rest, good technique and aerodynamics on the bike, and a good power to weight ratio. Now, if you focus on optimizing your power to weight ratio, which is basically how much you weigh and how much power you can put on the bike, you'll go a lot faster than simply if you didn't focus on that and upgrade your bike. Now, I saw this a lot in the comment section, which was if you weigh the same and have the same power output, you'll perform better on the bike that's more expensive. And in nowhere am I denying that. That just makes sense. That's common sense. If you're telling me you have a lighter, more aerodynamic bike, yes, you will perform better on that if you were comparing it to a $2,000 bike. If you're comparing a $10,000 bike to a $2,000 bike, yes, you will perform better on the $10,000 bike. But the whole point of the previous video and this video is that it is so negligible in terms of returns. What, 30, 40 seconds? And you're spending how much? $8,000 more to get 20 to 30 seconds. So for most people that don't need that 20, 30 seconds, we're not in the Tour de France. Most cyclists are not even at provincial racing level. So for the majority of cyclists, are you getting dropped from the group ride because you don't have a $10,000 bike? Or is it because you haven't focused on good training, good sleep, good nutrition, good technique, being as aero as you can on the bike, and on top of that, power to weight ratio? That's the whole point of the video that I'm trying to highlight, which a lot of people still have a hard time understanding. So at the end of the day, I like to say the gold standard is a 105 group set, a carbon fiber frame and fork if possible. It's cool if there's an aluminum steerer on the fork, that's totally fine, and aluminum rims. And if you're really on a tight budget, you could totally swap out the 105 group set for a Tiagra 10-speed group set, aluminum frame and fork instead of a carbon fiber, and then still aluminum rims would be totally fine, and you still could get super strong and have super good performance on the bike. Now, before I end the video, I just want to reiterate, I originally made the first video and also this video to remind cyclists that upgrading your setup in terms of your bike, the performance boost that it will offer you is so negligible. I'm talking about single digit negligible, that it's more important to focus on the factors that I mentioned before that would increase your overall cycling performance. I really want to make it clear for cyclists that are riding right now currently a bike that's $2,000 or less, that they can still get super strong and super fit on the bike, and it's not that their equipment is holding them back. Rather, they just have to optimize the factors I talked about regarding cycling performance. I'll sum it up in 4 easy things to remember: training, diet, sleep, and technique. If you can focus on these 4 things and do them on a consistent basis, your cycling performance will go through the roof. Now, rebuttal to those 4 factors that I saw in the comments where people were saying that to optimize those 4 factors takes time and time is money. But that's where I'll actually rebuttal them and say that the money you would actually be spending in terms of optimizing this, comparing upgrading your bike, you'll probably have a better value upgrading these 4 things than you would still upgrading your bike. So at the end of the day, nothing is free, time is money, and money is money in terms of upgrading. So at that point, either one you're gonna have to do, whether it's upgrading those 4 factors and increasing them and optimizing them, you're gonna have to give up some time, which is money. But in terms of just pure upgrades, that's pure money, which at that point, you know, this one's gonna yield a better overall cost ratio in terms of getting the best bang for your buck when compared to just simply upgrading. And to really summarize my point, expensive road bikes are a waste of money simply because there are factors that I already talked about, which were training, diet, sleep, technique, that would yield the best overall performance. I'll just keep really hammering this home because I want cyclists to really understand this, because it's very easy to fall into the cycling industry trap. You see a lot of times on YouTube, Instagram, people riding super expensive bikes and thinking, oh, I need a bike like them. And that could be further from the truth. Coming from someone that's completely revolutionized their fitness in 1 year, that have been in the cycling industry, that have ridden expensive bikes, cheap bikes, you know, value bikes, you know, I really want to share that knowledge with you guys, just in case you haven't had that experience that I have, to really understand what's worth your money and what's not. And I'll never debate that expensive road bikes are not a waste of money if you're going to maximize their performance potential, which is at the racing level, at the top tier racing level. So when people say, oh, you don't need to be a racer to have an expensive bike, then at that point, I don't really see it. Like I said, unless you have the financial means to do it, then do it. I'm not telling you not to. If you can buy, 20, 10K bikes, then totally do it. But obviously, most of us, most cyclists, even though you could, doesn't mean you should. So I think that's the whole point of the video that people really forget. Just because I can buy a $10,000 bike or you can buy a $10,000 bike doesn't mean you should feel obligated to buy one. And if I'm being completely honest, having a bike that's less expensive is so relaxing, knowing that if something breaks, if something scratches, I'm not going to be super stressed. And we can all pretend that even people that have $10,000 bikes, they would not be cool if it got a scratch or if it fell over. They are very cautious, and I've seen them on group rides. So with all that being said, the whole video is just to bring more awareness that you can really up your cycling performance even if you're on a cheaper bike. Expensive road bikes are a waste of money for the majority of cyclists. Unless you're at the top tier level or are being sponsored to ride the bike, then it's a waste of money. Even if you have the means to buy the bike, it's still a waste of money because you're not maximizing its full potential, and that's my opinion. And with that being said, I hope everyone watching right now, whether you're riding a $2,000 bike or a $15,000 bike, as long as you have a bike, I hope you ride as much as possible in this year, in 2021. I hope you ride to your full heart's content, get the most riding in, because I definitely will be doing that. So with that being said, if you like this video, drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, comment what your thoughts are. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Your experience. And until the next one, keep on pedaling.